today, not only to be in this beautiful convent church in Jaffa, in Israel, but to be joined by Douglas Murray, a man who on the streets of Israel absolutely needs no introduction whatsoever, a celebrity. I don't think you can walk down the street without getting stopped. But for anyone who doesn't know, an esteemed journalist, columnist at The Spectator, Telegraph, New York Post, and author of books, The Strange Death of Europe, Madness of Crowds, I should say, and War on the West. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I'm sorry that you've explained where our location is, because I was going to say how nice it was that you've come to my home.
So obviously we're in Israel, and this is a post-October 7th world, and it's the Israel-Hamas conflict that has brought you here. Hamas's Operation Al-Aqsa flood that on October 7th killed 1,200 Israelis and 253 people taken hostage. You've been here for a few months reporting, doing media across the world, going to the Gaza tunnels, I understand, going around the country. I wondered if you could tell us if there was anything, aside from the obvious reason that you're a journalist, but anything that compelled you specifically to come here to Israel for this conflict.
Well, I've been in Israel for most conflicts since 2006, where I was here during the Second Lebanon War. I've come here many times in peacetime as well. I wanted to come here as soon as I could after October the 7th for several reasons. One was that I believed that it was necessary to see what had happened and to see what was happening. I had an intuition that we were going to see two things in particular, which I think have panned out. One was that the world was going to move on from October the 7th immediately and on to what Israel was doing in response to October the 7th. And that was pretty much a story from October the 8th. It wasn't what had happened. It was, what are the Israelis doing? The world is always fascinated much more by what Israel does in response than in what is done to Israel. I mean, that's the case even with, rocket fire of the kind that just goes on all the time here, even in non-conflict times. Rockets are fired from Gaza, Israel fires rockets back, and the international media says Israel fires rockets into Gaza. So I knew that first of all that was going to happen. And the second thing was I sort of got an idea early on that we were also going to see, as we have done, denial of the atrocities. And I mean, that happened from the day after. Yeah. As ever, with people who hate Israel, they simultaneously deny the atrocities and revel in them. They celebrate something they also diminish. And so in that situation, as you well know, it's best to see things with your own eyes, because at least then, when they say, as people do, this didn't happen or that didn't happen, you can say, no, I know, because I saw it with my own eyes. So that's partly why I'm here.
It's kind of astonishing to imagine what it would take for these people who are denying it. When would they actually believe? We've seen most of the videos from October 7th were on social, well, maybe not most, but certainly a lot of them were online. We saw them. Hamas were gloating about it. What would it? And we see also that we know what the Hamas charter is. Now again with the war on the Houthis in the Red Sea, their literal charter is, God is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam. And on the streets of London, Yemen, Yemen, make us proud, turn another ship around. I can't imagine what it would take for that to...
Well, those people are beyond reason or persuasion, of course. I mean, those people are enemies. They are enemies of Israel. They're enemies of Britain. They're enemies of America, enemies of the West. If American, British, and other ships are attacked by Houthi rebels, why would you be chanting in support of the Houthi in London? only if you hate the city you're in, the country you're in, the society you're in. And there is
So
a
true.
significant number of people who that's the case. I think there's a larger number of people who are just very easily persuadable, who are very, very ignorant and
So true.
hadn't ever heard of a Houthi until a couple of weeks ago, and now have become wild experts on them. But it's the people in the middle. It's the non-fanatics, non-psychopaths, the non-dogmatic Islamists, just enemies of the West, who are the ones who are persuadable.
Unfortunately,
People
so true.
who celebrated the massacres and really loved them, as there are many people in Britain who did and who said so on the streets and are still saying so. Those people I'm not interested in. Really, they're enemies.
Absolutely,
and
100%.
That's that. I mean, it's like
Even if they're British.
oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Even if
it's
they're
not my
American,
fault,
British,
it's
doesn't matter.
theirs. You know, if you glory in the death and slaughter and the murder and the kidnapping and beheading of Jews, I don't regard you as being the best of British, you know? And
As Douglas said, those aren't British values. Those aren't American values. Those aren't world values, unless, of course, you are terrorists, Islamists, fundamentalists. And I would be saying this, and Douglas would be saying this, if this was being done by another ethnicity or another religious group or another group of fanatics, when it happens anywhere around the world. Any type of genocide, any type of terrorist act, any type of thing, anybody that would be reveling in that when they're innocents that this has happened to. Of course, we wouldn't say that they were British or Canadian or Australian or American. Those aren't the values that the Western democracies export. It's everything against those values. We stand for goodness. We stand for truth. We stand for honor. We stand for sacrifice. We stand for love. Those are the values that the Western democracies stand for.
And I think were taken wild advantage of by such people. But there is this large group of people, and I think this has shocked a lot of people, particularly in America, where I spend a lot of my time, who they're shocked by the fact that there's a younger generation there who really do seem to be taking the cause of Israel's enemies up as a sort of, as I said recently, their generation's free Tibet. They think free Palestine is the sort of cool thing to call for.
Yes.
They have no concept of what they're talking about.
They don't have a freaking clue.
When somebody says from the river to the sea, either they know that they are calling for the end of the Jewish state,
Or they're just stupid, idiotic
or
morons.
they don't know which river it is, and they don't know which sea it is, and they probably couldn't guess.
Well, I want to come to Britain, but one thing I've noticed whilst being here, now being in London, we're here all the time, from the river to the sea, and there's no conversation about a two-state solution. What I've been really struck about here, mainly with Israelis, is that they also aren't talking about a two-state solution.
No.
And for me, I brought that up and I felt anachronistic doing so. It's like, it's a dated opinion. And,
Yes.
Even Netanyahu has said he wants total control of that region from the river to the sea.
I would say not. You don't need to say even Netanyahu. People might expect Netanyahu to say that. It's more striking that all of the Israeli left, everybody you speak to in this country, I've spoken to people.
They've
who are
all
lifelong
changed their
leftists,
minds big
lifelong
time.
Peace now. People who were employing and working with Palestinians from the Gaza, who see no future in this so-called two-state solution. And I think the rest of the world needs to catch up on that. There are a lot of anachronisms about the world's opinion about the country we're sitting in, and lots of just wildly out-of-date, defunct views. The two-state solution was a mantra for a certain type of politician in the West for some decades. But picked up in the 2000s after 9/11, when people wanted to find the sort of solution to the Middle East problem. And they would call it the Middle East problem. And I'd always say, well, which problem are you talking about? This region is replete with problems. Oh no, it's the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. And sensible, moderate people, sort of David Miliband's, the Camerons, these sorts of people would say, well, the real thing that needs to be sorted out is the two-state solution, the solution of a founding of a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli state. And the thing is, there's sort of two problems with that. One is the idea that if the Palestinians actually had a state called Palestine, that would not mean that the economy of Yemen boomed. It would not mean that the Saudis made greater leaps forward in human rights. It would not mean that the mullahs in Tehran would stop killing girls on the streets of Tehran and other Iranian cities. The idea that the whole of the region is held back because a small population who the Arabs and Persians and others in the region really don't care for, the Palestinians.
That is so true.
They're
That
waiting
is so
for them
true.
to get a state in order to sort of improve themselves or sort of make themselves more reasonable members of the international community is palpable, demonstrable, obvious nonsense. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the reality on the ground has just changed, and it's changed for several reasons. One was when the Israelis disengaged from Gaza in 2005-06, and I remember it very well, and I remember the very fervent debates in this country as well as around the world, and the pressure from the Republican government administration in America to withdraw every Jew from Gaza and hand the Gaza over to the Palestinians and have free and fair elections in Gaza. Well, the Palestinians promptly elected Hamas, who then killed their Palestinian brothers and sisters who were from rival groups like Fatah, threw them off buildings, shot them in the back, dragged their corpses around behind trucks around the Gaza in a celebration. That was an early sign, I would say, that the two-state solution was in trouble, because they'd been given a state in Gaza. And, there were left-wing politicians, many of whom I spoke to, who, they said at the time, you've got all of the infrastructure we left, the international community will give you money, we will give you money. Okay, you're not going to be able to control your airspace, for instance, but you build Singapore. And
yes.
They didn't build Singapore.
No.
The leaders of
they built
Hamas enriched
Shittypore
themselves and their sons. They bought expensive penthouses in Qatar and around other parts of the world. And they built a tunnel system that's the world's biggest tunnel system. And they launched rockets repeatedly at Israel. And then on October the 7th, they had this big breakout through the fence and massacred people in their homes and young men and women at a party, among other things. And so anyone who thinks that the Palestinian state, the sort of two-state solution thing is obvious, first of all has to contend with the fact that they were given a state. They were given a state, and they made it a terror state. And there's no reason why Israelis should have to live beside that, any more than we in Britain should live beside a terror state, or Americans should live beside a terror state lobbing rockets into them all the time. And then you have the problem of the West Bank. And the West Bank is a big problem, because I was out the other night again there, and you can see from the bits of the West Bank, which many people think in a two-state solution with the West Bank would be given to the Palestinians, you can see the lights of the city we're sitting in at night. And it's not just that it's within rocket range, it's within artillery range. So the city we're sitting in, if the Palestinians were given more of a state than they have, and they actually have a quasi-state in the West Bank under the control of the Palestinian Authority, if they were given a state, there's no guarantee at all that they wouldn't do the same. In fact, it's almost certain that they would do the same, which means that the entirety of Israel is at constant, not just threat, but likelihood of constant bombardment from every direction, from rockets, RPGs, break-ins, and much more. So it's intolerable. And I think that the rest of the world has not realized this. And it's
They're
not
not
just
there.
intolerable for the Israelis for this demand. It's something we wouldn't tolerate. I mean, the idea that you would reward, like Secretary Blinken was here again the other day, and he keeps up this thing of, this is why we need to double down on the two-state solution. First of all, you're singing a dead song. And secondly, why should the reward for October the 7th be a gift of another terror state to the Palestinians? I don't see why. But as I say, that's common opinion in Israel across the political spectrum. But the rest of the world hasn't caught up. And I worry about that disjunct.
Does that mean that you're
Powerful, powerful insight, powerful statements. They're crystal clear. They make so much sense. But it's easy for, like I said, liberal-minded leftist politicians, even on the even conservative side, to basically tell Israel, yeah, you know what? You just gotta learn to live and let live. So what if you've got a terror state living next to you? It's easy to say when you don't have a terror state living next to you. It's easy for a politician to say, hey, you know what? It's the same. It's what I'll give you the analogy. It's like what's happening right now in America with the sanctuary cities. You can talk all, oh, you have to be kind. You have to be good natured. You have to be good hearted. You have to take everybody in. That's what we would do. That's what love is all about. We're going to take everybody in. We're going to do whatever we can. You're saying it's a problem. It's not a problem. You just don't know how to handle it. Because if we were down there, if we were doing it, we'd show you how nice we would take those. We would allow those people to come in. We would allow them to coalesce. We would do everything we could. What happens when the shit hits a fan, and what's happening down in the southern border gets exported into New York City, into Chicago, into other cities? Oh, now they're crying. We can't handle it. You guys got to go back. We don't want all you illegals here right now. This isn't the place to come. Stay where you're at. But it's easy to tell Israel, oh yeah, you know what? Two-state solution, that'll solve the problem. All the Mideast problems will be going away. Be no more problem in Yemen, no more problem in Saudi Arabia. Iran would settle down and buckle up. The Houthis would buckle up. Hamas would come to the peace table. Al Qaeda and ISIS will lay down their arms and say, hey, two-state solution, our job is done. Let's concentrate on building a Singapore in the Mideast, a Hong Kong in the Mideast. Let's do that. They're not going to do that. They were given that chance and they didn't. Those people that are running Hamas killed their opposition, took the money that was given to them, bought multi-million-dollar penthouses and real estate in Qatar and other places, living high on the hog, utilizing the money to buy armaments and rockets, terror tunnels, all kinds of things. And they expect Israel just to acquiesce and say, yeah, that's going to be very fine. No sane country would do that. No one. But it's easy to say when it's not in your backyard. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you've done so already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. Put your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Take a look at our other video links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.